My 80s playlist. I'm Steve Danier. Pete Waterman, hello. It's an absolute pleasure to meet you. You are a complete legend. I think I spent more of my pocket money on you.
Don't blame me. Everybody blames me. You know, I spent all my pocket money.
I did.
Them Ferraris you own, I bought them.
Very, very happy memories, though. Thank you so much for coming in with your list. A stellar bunch of tracks. And you were saying they've kind of mapped out, you know, your career, because it goes all the way back, doesn't it, before PWL?
Yeah. And so what I've tried to do, I mean, I've tried not to pick anything that I'm involved with, rather try and pick stuff that shows the influences I was under that before Stock Aitken Waterman. So I have picked one track that I was involved with, which most people wouldn't even know that I had anything to do with. But it was just, I thought, what a great opportunity to actually play stuff probably I haven't heard for 25, 30 years.
Yeah.
But were really so important to me back at that late, you know, very early 80s.
Yeah. And what to start with, I mean, the very first one, we're going straight into Bowie. You've picked...
Well, this is one of my favourite all-time records.
Which is?
Let's Dance.
Why is that?
And, well, I think this record, two reasons. David Bowie and this track, to me, changed my life. I mean, they really did. I mean, obviously the Beatles and things like that were vastly important to me, as was Motown. But this record was the record that made me look at the charts in a completely different way. Because I'd been a David Bowie fan, but not a raving David Bowie fan.
Right.
Okay. So I'd played lots of David Bowie in clubs all the way through. So I, you know, and when I had the shop, I sold lots of David Bowie records. So I was a fan, but not an ultra fan. No, I wasn't an uber fan by any stretch of the imagination. Then one day I heard on a London radio station, which will name nameless, but it's in the capital. I heard this noise. I mean, I never forget it. It was like boom, and it came on, and I instantly ran for the radio and turned it up, and it was Let's Dance, and I just went, that is the perfect pop record.
And it hit you straight away.
Oh, straight away. It was like, I still get goosebumps thinking of the moment. I remember, you know, they obviously said we got the new David Bowie single coming up, and they played it, and I just went, wow. Because to me it was, and still is, that album Let's Dance is the sea change of pop music. It's when technology got together with pop songs and changed the whole industry. Mm-hmm. And, you know, obviously it's produced by the Chic guys, you know, so it's you know, I'd already been in the disco, I knew all the Chic guys, and, you know, I know them all. So it was like, wow, that's possible, you know, that's possible. And when I heard that, I just went, this is unbelievable. And then my best mate, one of my best mates, I can name drop now, unfortunately he's no longer with us, but he was a great influence and he was a great supporter of mine. I did spend a lot of time working for the Beatles when they were in Savile Row. And the guy that ran Savile Row was a guy called Malcolm Davis, and Malcolm was really the guy that gave me information. If I wanted to know how something worked, I would go to Malcolm, because he cut all the Beatles records.
Oh, wow.
He cut them all.
Gosh.
So he ran Apple Studios and he cut all the records. So I would go to him for advice, you know, technical advice. And I remember, you know, ringing Malcolm and saying, have you heard this Let's Dance by David Bowie? He said, yeah. He said, it's on EMI. I cut it for David Bowie. So I guessed he would, but, you know. He said, and they make this effect with the way that they've recorded the drums. And so I didn't think no more about it. Then he rang me back about a year later, and he said to me, would you like to go to the David Bowie Let's Dance concert at Milton Keynes? Would I? Sure I would. I mean, you know, the donkeys eat strawberries. So I remember really, really well going out there, and that night we were just really starting to break through, literally, but we hadn't cracked it. We'd sort of got round the edges. We were starting to sort of make slight inroad, but we hadn't cracked how to make it work. Yeah. I remember going out to Milton Keynes and at the Bowl. And it was a lovely evening, and I thought, I'll stand at the back and I'll watch the crowd, because I'm a DJ.
Yeah.
So, you know, when I worked for Mecca, what you did, you judged the records by watching a crowd.
Mm-hmm.
So you learnt to read what tracks work by the crowd, not what you were playing. So I went and stood by the sound desk at the back, because Malcolm had got me an all access, all areas access back. So I stood at the back, and I watched, and I was really interested, because it was quite eye-opening for me, because some numbers people went radio rentals, and then other numbers people were polite. And I thought, something going on here. You're watching the crowd, and of course he got clapped every number.
Yeah.
But sometimes the crowd went like supersonic, and then other times the only way to say it, they were polite. And then I thought, I better think about this. And of course I worked out then, when he played his hits, the crowd went ballistic.
Yeah.
When he played his album tracks, the crowd were, polite.
Yeah.
So I watched this and I thought, I wonder what happens when he plays Let's Dance. So of course he finished the set with Let's Dance, because it was a serious moonlighting tour. Woof, the crowd went nuts, right? So I went, righto, Pete, now, don't get carried away with this. Don't think you found the keys to the golden universe, because you've been to one gig. It's at Milton Keynes, for God's sake. It could be the rest of the world could, walk out the stadium when he played Let's Dance. So I said to Malcolm, can you get me tickets to go to Wembley? Because he was at Wembley just after that. So he said, well, Carlos Alou's coming in a minute, which is Bowie's guitarist. Would you like to go with him? So I'll get you a pass to go with him, and you can go and spend the whole week at Wembley with David Bowie if you want. So I thought, well, this is research. This is definitely research. Cut a long story very short. I went to Wembley, I went to Tokyo, went to San Francisco, I went to Montreal, I went to Toronto, and every time I went, exactly the same reaction to the same songs in the same way. There was no venue anywhere in the world that acted any differently. And I remember coming back and saying to Matt and Mike, I've got it. It's all about the song. You record a hit song, you've got a hit record. You can dress everything up. If the song ain't a hit, the record won't be a hit.
Brilliant.
It'll stall at number 40. And I remember sitting, when we came back from the pub, they went, why does Let's Dance mean so much to you? And I remember sitting down and saying, listen to the hi-hats. Now, people listening to this are going to go, he's on something. This boy is definitely takes it. But the hi-hats on that record, and I've always believed this from the first reggae records I bought, when they become metronomic, you buy them. It's that tick, 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 tick. And the great thing with Chic, they were very metronomic. And so it was the fact that suddenly we hadn't got Bernard or Niall, but we had a drum machine that could keep perfect time, and so we could get the swing.
I mean, I'm sat here with you, you're playing amazing songs that influenced you. This is a proper treat. And the next one is Eurythmics, Sweet Dreams. Wow, this record is incredible. Tell me.
Well, I'm lucky in that I lived at Crouch End in Park Road, so this came out right at the start of Stock Aitken Waterman, and I'm still doing a bit of DJing, and this Eurythmics album was huge, because again, it's technology with pop songs, and Andy Lennox obviously is utterly unbelievable. And of course Dave's studio was in Crouch End, so you could sneak in, or I could sneak in and listen to stuff that they were doing,
right,
and see what they were doing.
So you're almost ahead of the game there. Yeah.
Oh no, and that's important. You've got to be ahead of the game. It's that fine balance where if you're too early, it doesn't work, and if you're too late, you're copying. You've got to be right. I guess it's knowing when to score a goal. If you score too early, you've got the rest of the game defending. Yeah. And if you score last minute, you're going to win.
Don't you think this song's really interesting because it sounds retro and futuristic all at once? Yeah. And how is that created, that kind of sound?
It's a pop song. It's a pop song with a modern treatment. I mean, the technological stuff, the synthesizers and all that on there are quite brilliant. Quite brilliant. But at the end of the day, it's just a great song with a great singer. And that's what I say. It's like, Dave Stewart's obviously a huge, obviously a really excellent musician, and he used this to create this lovely picture. And it was new. You got to remember, the same as before. Nobody else was doing this. So this Sweet Dreams, or the Eurythmics album, to me was like groundbreaking. Dave Stewart was doing rock and roll, but without the roll. If you get it, was rock without the roll.
Yeah.
And he added technology, and I just thought, I cannot afford to employ the great musicians that Dave Stewart would employ with Annie Lennox. So I can't be the Eurythmics, because I can't afford to go and get some of the greatest musicians in London because of the cost. I didn't have that budget. But as long as I've got a great synthesizer and a great drummer and a great programmer, and we take our time, we can achieve at least 70% of what Dave Stewart was achieving. Not 100%, but certainly 70%.
Brilliant. Very excited about this new pick, and I'm dying to ask you what the clubbing scene was like when this record came out.
This next track is Soft Cell's Tainted Love.
Love it.
And this was important to me.
Go on.
Because this really made me a big DJ.
Right.
Okay. So I've been DJing for Mecca since 1968, I think 67, 68. And in Mecca we used to get all these advanced copies, demos and advanced copies. So I had a really good collection of obscure records that, were not hits and nobody really took any notice of. And I remember going to a club in Derby, and of course I was playing Motown and Stax and that sort of stuff, and nobody danced. I mean, nobody danced.
Why?
They just didn't dance. And I'm thinking, hang on a minute, I can get everybody dancing, in my club. And a guy came up to me and he said, have you got Darryl Banks, Our Love Is in the Pocket? I went, yeah. He said, oh, well, you've got some Northern Soul then, have you? I'd never heard of Northern Soul.
Okay.
Right? I hadn't heard of it.
Uh-huh.
So I played it and the place went radio. Rentals, the place people were leaping up. It was like, well, and I thought, right, up-tempo stuff. What have I got in my box which is up-tempo stuff? And then I remembered I had this track by Gloria Jones called Tainted Love, right? I played it. Well, it was like I suddenly walked on water. It was like these guys in this club all went, he's got Gloria Jones. Bow down to the king. And I remember going to a shop in Leeds, Jumbo Records in Leeds. And I went in there, and he was talking about Northern Soul. He said, have you ever heard of a track by Gloria Jones called Tainted Love? I said, I've got it. He said, how much you want for it? So I said, well, I don't want to sell it. He said, no, I'll give you a couple of £100 for it. I said, no. He said, well, could I borrow it? I said, sure. The next thing I know, about, it wasn't 4 months later, what do I hear? On the radio, Soft Cell's Tainted Love. And of course they got it from Jumbo Records. And that was my record that I'd lent them that they'd copied. And
so they just re-recorded it.
Just re-recorded it.
Made it their own.
Yeah.
How did the original compare with Mark Allman's Soft Cell's version?
Well, again, that was another lesson, because you can be too purist. I'm a purist there, thinking nothing can touch Gloria Jones, which of course it couldn't. But I got it wrong. You couldn't buy Gloria Jones, but you could buy Mark Allman, and It was the same. That's what and I just thought, I miss that. And what the real kick of this record is a Tainted Love.
Yeah. It's almost like the perfect pop song, and what you went on to do, and what you are the absolute master of, is creating that perfect pop song.
Well, that's why I played this record, because it shows you, that even I couldn't spot sometimes what made it work, and somebody else did, and then you look back and you think, wow, that's amazing. So I could have done that. Why didn't I do that? Because you're a schmuck. That's what you are. You missed it. You missed it. You're too wound up in the preciousness of Gloria Jones, and you could have done it with anybody because you knew it's a hit. Because every time, wherever you went, you played it, it filled the dance floor.
Yeah.
Filled it.
This song was really popular in the gay scene in the 80s. Were you inspired? Did you kind of take a look at what was going down on nightclubs like Heaven and what have you to inspire your future sound?
Well, Steve, I think that I'm old now, right? And of course, I go pre-gay scene. Okay, so I remember that when it was illegal to be homosexual, there were private clubs on a Sunday that had locked doors with little hatches in.
Wow.
And you had to be a member to go. And I got invited to DJ at one of these clubs in a place in Coventry, and I went with my records totally innocent. I have no idea what this was about.
Yeah.
And I absolutely adored it, because every record you played at the time that was a dance record, everybody danced. It was like, wow, this is amazing. Things like At the Top of the Stairs by the Formations, just, I can't remember, Knock on Wood by, it's just, they danced, whatever you played, and they clapped. And I thought, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And so I took that on for about, I guess, I must have done 6 months, 7 months in those days. And I mean, it's incredible now when you look back. I mean, it was such a different scene, and it was such an underground scene. And the names they called each other, that was the thing.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, if I dare tell you what you called, I'd get locked up. But that's what they did. It was it was an amazing clique. It was an amazing little scene. So when I came back, and we'll get onto that later in the story, some of these other records. When I came back from Canada, I was desperate to find, a niche where I fitted. Right, and so one of my best mates that I'd met before I went out there, he had a little gay label. Literally, I mean, he had Fortums, but he was putting out these little records, and he was working around the one or two big clubs in London, Tottenham and places like that, and the Sundown. And I went with him a couple of times. Well, I knew this scene. I mean, I hadn't sort of appreciated it since disco, because I'd sort of lumped it in with the disco phase, and then suddenly I'm going, hang on, this is like the clubs I was playing back in the 60s.
Yeah.
And I sort of said to Barry, I know this scene inside. No. He said, you have to be gay. He's like, I said, no, nonsense. I know this scene. He said, and I'll never forget, it seems strange now. I remember we sitting down in the flat, and Barry saying to me, to write a gay song, it's got to have the word boy in the title. I went, what? He went, it's got to have boy in the title. Because it was called Boys Town. Yeah. That's what it was called. It wasn't called, it wasn't gay then, it was just Boys Town. And I remember saying, Barry, it's a load of bloody nonsense. If it's a hit song, it's a hit song. And I remember going away thinking, right, this I know this market. So if I could create Motown in a gay way, that's the end. That's the way forward. Because this market is not prejudice. Yeah. This market wants a product that it loves. So it doesn't care where I'm from or who I am and what I am. Yeah. If I deliver on the record they want, they'll play it.
It's interesting you pick this song. This is The Police, Every Breath You Take. Slightly different tempo from the ones we've heard so far. Yeah. Tell me more about this song. Because it's legendary in every way, isn't it? Yeah,
and I learned very quickly as a DJ that you have to break every now and again. You can't just play all Northern Soul. You can't just play all reggae. You can't just play all oldies. So you need, in a simple form, to play hits of the day. And I mean, I've been through a period when Motown died. It was a very difficult period in clubs at that time, because we resorted to playing oldies, which was great for about 3 or 4 weeks, and then people got bored, and your crowd, I mean, I was doing 2,000 and I went down to 400 people. Suddenly you're thinking, oh my God, what do I do here? Yeah. And then you think, and a mate's brother came up to me and said, can you play the Sweet? Now I would have never played the Sweet in all the tea in China. I played it, poof, everybody went mad, and within 3 months I'm back up to 2,000 kids coming through the door. The Police, to me, Every Breath You Take was one of those amazing pop records that fitted right across the genre. So I had no problem with playing the latest R&B hit and dropping The Police after it, because to me it just worked. Nobody left the dance floor, everybody sang along, and just in itself it's Sting obviously has got that empathy in his voice. He's got that soul. So it's almost, which is why obviously it became a great rap record. It's got that feel and that belief in it.
Yeah.
So and Sting is a lovely, lovely bloke.
You know him?
Oh yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously we've won, lots of awards for songwriting.
Yeah.
We get these awards for so many radio plays, and for a long time, Sting and us were always at the same dues. He's a tremendous person, but if you want to write a song, write every breath you take. I mean, it's, them songs. People think it's easy writing songs, Steve. Right? They really do. But you hear a song like that and you go, okay, off you go. I'll give you £1 million if you walk in here now and give me one of them, because you're not going to do it.
No.
Because the great thing is, 55, 60 years in this career, I've heard the phrase where because I've always tried to see people, because you never know. Okay, leave your mind open, and you come in and a kid will sit in front of you and he'll go, you know what, I've written 140 songs. And you go, have you? You go, yep. I said, tell me, don't play me 139, play me the hit. Well, they're all hits. I said, you've got 140. Yeah. I said, right, I'll give you 2 songs, and if you ain't played me hitting 2 songs, you're leaving. Of course, they're left. They're left by the end of the first song, because you've said pick the songs you think are hits, and of course they can't.
Brilliant. Very excited about this next track, Pete. New Order, Blue Monday. Pete, this is probably my favourite song of all time. I'm so glad that you've picked this song. Tell me, as somebody who absolutely loves this song, why you love it.
Oh, well, there are epoch... I hope I played records that changed pop history. Okay? I think I have. This was... on Factory Records, Tony Wilson played me this record. And... it had got things that drum machines could do that drummers couldn't do.
Right.
So I listened to this record and I thought, how the hell did he make that? Because no drummer could do that. He couldn't. His leg wouldn't move fast enough. Right? So I'm sitting there thinking, how did it? It's amazing. And of course, it's 12-inch.
Yes.
Right?
That's how it originally came out.
Yes.
Wasn't it? 12-inch. It was like 7.5 minutes long.
Yeah. So I got, because I was in Manchester. Our office was in Manchester, not far from Tony's. So I saw Tony every day of the week. And this record was selling. It wasn't getting in the charts. And Tony was totally frustrated. But I'd go to a club that night. The first record you play, to say I'm here, you'd stick on New Order and the place would go Radio Rentals. And then for an hour and a half, you just keep everybody dancing, and everybody would say, "Phew, you're a fantastic DJ, mate." Just obvious. I played Blue Monday, And so when I met Matt and Mike, for the very first time, I'll never forget, we were in Bayham Street, North London, up at Stiff Records, and the boys came in, and I sussed out quite quickly they were quite brilliant musicians. But I knew they wouldn't have heard of Blue Monday. I knew they got no chance. I mean, you had to be pretty sort of at a cutting edge at that point.
Yeah.
New Order. And I played it, and they went, "That's amazing. It's amazing." And they went, "That's a drum machine." Yeah. They went, "It's a Linn drum machine." I go, "Oh, I've got one of them." So I fetched the Linn drum machine out, set it up in the office, and I think it was Matt actually played the drum pattern. I'm thinking, wow, wait a minute, it's amazing. I found a kid who knows how to do this.
Yeah.
And it literally was that record that made me, when we decided to work together, say, right, we have to be as revolutionary as New Order is. I don't want to hear any guitars on the records. I don't want no real drums, no pianos, nothing. Well, they still laugh at me to this day. We talk about this. I said, I want revolutionary records. I want you to hear a record and instantly know that it's Stock Aitken Waterman. The minute you hear it, you go, that's Stock Aitken Waterman.
Yeah.
Because nobody else is doing it.
Yeah.
New Order will never repeat that, because that was never going to happen again. That would never be repeated. So that's why I picked it, because to me it was so revolutionary. I knew that Tony was not interested in the club scene at all. Really, he was more into his, Happy Mondays. So he wasn't really focusing on New Order at all, doing that at all. It was just I think, with the greatest respect to Tony, I think he got lucky. How lucky he was. I mean, I think he once told me it did about $1.5 million. And God rest his soul. I bet he never paid.
Love it. It's just going back to something you said a moment ago, even as a 12, 13-year-old, I'm sorry if this ages you, but I could, when I was at school, I'd be able to tell within 3 seconds, listening to the radio, Stockacre and Waterman.
Well,
it's true. You just knew, didn't you?
Yeah, and
the songs were different, but they all had. What did they have? They had a
signature.
Yeah,
they had a signature. We're sitting on radio. This is Virgin Radio. We're sitting here. You're coming out the news. You've just told the nation the worst news they've ever heard. How do you come out the news? You can't come out the news with another sad record, can you? You've got to go, oh Christ, we're coming out the news. How do we come out? We just told the world's going to end in 5 minutes. What do we do? You play a Stockacre and Waterman record, and then they've forgotten the news.
Yeah,
and that was very much part of my radio background and my DJing background. You've had a break, right? How do I come out positive and get you into the next stage so you can move on?
Brilliant.
So again, with all these records that I've picked deliberately to show you where my head was at and what these records were doing to me, making me focus, because at the end of the day, we're in a competition. Mm-hmm. We had to make enough money to pay the staff, pay the wages and pay the mortgages or whatever it was, but we weren't blessed with record companies chucking 50 grand at us to make a single. We had to sell records, so therefore you had to, going back to
everyone mattered, everyone counted.
Well, going back to New Order, you've got to create a record that's going to sell and sell and sell, and you're going to get paid and paid and paid. So rather than take the 25-30 grand up front, you're taking the royalties, and it's constantly, that gives you the money to make the next record, because you've got no record company ringing you up and saying, "Pete, just nip down there and make us a number one." I mean, it wasn't like that. In fact, the opposite. When we had the first number one, the last people they rang were us. Our phones went dead, because it was like, well, we can't go to them because they've got a formula. Well, everybody's got a formula. It's just how you use the formula, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Your next pick's Blancmange.
Oh yeah.
Tell me about this song.
Another one of those records. I was living in Canada. I had the biggest record on the planet that we'd produced, which was Musical Youth Past the Dutchie. Mm. It was number one all over the world, and we had to record the boys in California. They were managed by the Birmingham Education Authority,
right? And
there were tax implications, so because kids couldn't get the money, so it was in trust for the cat. So we recorded it in LA. I went then. I didn't want to come back to England straight away, so I went to Canada for a while, and wow, Canada's great if you're Canadian, but it's like the music, it was like, have I stepped back in time here?
Really? It's totally different.
Well, I went to see Spinal Tap, and I thought it was funny, and nobody in the audience thought it was funny. It was like, whoa, nobody thought it was, the whole film, you've seen the film, because it's taking the mickey out of metal.
Yeah.
Nobody in Canada understood that, Saranga, man, it's stitches, it's doubly, I'm sitting roaring of laughter, and people are going, what's he laughing at? And it's like, and I remember saying to Carol, that was my girlfriend at the time, and her sister, God, dear, the music is dreadful. And they had a station in just outside Toronto, and I can't remember what it's called now, but it was one of them fringe stations that sort of thought it was English, right? So they were the hip station, and all the jockeys were hip on the station.
Quite edgy.
Yeah. So these boys would, so I got to. They said you should listen to K100 or whatever it's called. And I tuned in, and they've all got false English accents. I love it,
I love
talking false English accents. I love it, Anyway, I'm listening, and then I heard this record, and I thought, wow, what is that? And they didn't announce it. So I remember this place was like, I'm going to say 20 miles outside Toronto. Right. So I rang Carol and said, where's this station based? And they went, now, you'd only do this being English, by the way. So this is definitely a British story.
Yeah.
Right. So she said it's in, I don't know, it was somewhere like Scarborough, which is. So I went and got a taxi, jumped in this taxi to this radio station, right? I didn't think anything of this. On the door, knocked on the door, and I went, excuse me, you played a record earlier. It was like this, and they went, who are you? And I went, no, I'm a record producer from the UK. And they looked at me and they went, no. I said, yeah, well, where have you come from? I said, I've jumped in a cab from, Toronto. And the guy sort of snuffed, looked at me. So what have you produced then? I said, well, just Musical Youth, Bastard Duchy. Suddenly it was like, oh, come on in. And I sort of walked in and I said to the guy, you played a record earlier. I said, it's amazing, And I've come out to find out what it was. He said, well, why didn't you phone in? I just never thought, it was like, you had to be British. I never even thought of because you couldn't do that with British radio stations. You couldn't phone in, they wouldn't answer the phone.
Of course not, unless it was a competition, then they wouldn't do that. Yeah. How much was the taxi?
Oh, I don't remember, it was probably 15, 20 quid.
Right.
But I didn't care because that record was Blancmange, Living on the Ceiling. And I remember calling Peter Collins in LA, or I think it was in Nashville, who was my partner in Musical Youth. And I rang him, I said, go out and get this record.
Yeah.
It's in the English charts. It's by Blancmange, Living on the Ceiling. And I remember I was meeting him a week later in LA, and we were in Lion's Show, which is Kenny Rogers' studio. And Lionel Richie was in the studio. And I remember going in and playing Blancmange, Living on the Ceiling. Now you can follow that story up with your own version of what Lionel Richie thought. Because he then went on to record it very similar.
Yes. Yeah, and it's interesting you say that. This record, I think, influenced a lot of other records to come. I mean, am I talking rubbish when I say out loud, Dead or Alive, Spin Me Around, for example?
That might be a bit too much, but definitely, it definitely influenced lots of Motown artists at that time. Yeah. Because it was so, and you got to remember when we were there with Musical Youth, everybody wanted to meet Musical Youth. So you're in Kenny Rogers' studio, so you've got people like Mr. T hanging about, Diana Ross hanging about. So, and Lionel Richie was constantly in. And these guys at Motown, they were like big sponges. And Stevie Wonder taught me this. They would hear something, they'd soak it in. They'd work out what made it work. And they'd be writing a tune very similar within a couple of hours. Which
is very much what you did.
There you go.
With your factory, wasn't it?
Which is why I played your Blancmange.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Because I watched the Motown guys go, got it.
And it was a factory, wasn't it?
Yes.
It was like bang. Okay, brilliant. I feel like, I've always wanted to meet you. I feel like I should just ask you a couple of questions from a fan. Things that I read back in the day in Smash Hits magazine, just humour me here. Was Rick Astley a T-boy?
Yes, he was.
And
actually, it's a better story than that, Steve.
Go on.
He was a youth opportunity training programme operator.
Really?
Yes, that's what he was.
What does that mean?
Well, the government ran a scheme for people out.
It's like YTS, wasn't it?
Yes, that's it. People out of work.
Yeah.
YOPS. Youth opportunity programmes. He got 30 quid a week from the government.
Wow.
And we topped him up with 20 quid, and he lived in my flat. So, I'd bring him down on a Monday. Yeah, that's the truth.
So how did you work out that he could sing very quickly?
I'd seen him at Haydock Racecourse.
Right.
At Christmas do. And then a friend of mine had taken me, the classic story is, I went to a place which is no longer there, a place called Monks' Social Club in Warrington, right? And it was, they're a building company. And I turned up in a brand new silver Ferrari. I don't think anybody in Warrington had ever seen a Ferrari, so you can imagine this turned up as a social club on a Sunday night, and Rick was amazing, and I didn't know this till probably 2 years ago. Rick wasn't even the singer in the group. He turned up that night as a singer because the drummer hadn't turned up, and normally Rick was the drummer,
right? So
he'd had to go as a singer, and one of the other lads had gone as a drummer.
Amazing.
And I thought they were awful, but I thought was amazing.
Yeah.
So I said to Dave as I left, that was that manager, right, okay, dump the band, that kid, I'll give him a job tomorrow. Start with me on Monday. He turned me down.
Why?
He didn't want to lose the group. Didn't want to leave the group. And then it must have been 12, 14 weeks before I got a call that said, you know what? The group has done the dirty on him. They've chucked him out. So, yeah, he's available.
And then the rest is history.
Yeah,
mate, I had to ask you that.
Yeah.
I'll ask you another one later on.
Right.
So Thompson Twins, beautiful record. We play this loads on Virgin Radio 80s Plus. Hold Me Now.
Yeah. Again, this comes from Canada. Same station. You know, it was that conversation when you get into with DJs. Oh, you like that, dear? Try this one. Who that? What's this? And I remember I'd heard of the Thompson Twins before I went to Canada. So Stephen Duffy had played me a track, or I'd heard a track by Stephen Duffy because it was recorded in Victoria, in the studios in Victoria. So I'd heard the basis of this. I hadn't heard Hold Me Now, but I sort of knew of it. So when he played it again, it's one of those tracks that just went, this is perfect. Absolutely.
And it grabs
perfect.
you, doesn't it?
And it was unusual, you know, the three of them with a girl with her hair. And I went to see them at Crystal Palace live, you know, and it was all that learning for me. It was like, that's different, that looks different, that works different, but the song's there. Oh man, I just really clever production with a good image.
Yeah, with a great image.
Yeah.
My second nerdy question, just quickly then. So I read somewhere Kylie Minogue had come over from Australia to meet you. I'm sure it was in Smash Hits, but you didn't know she was coming, or you had nothing planned, so you
wasn't there.
Right.
I wasn't there.
You wasn't.
I was in Newton Lewis. I was doing a Hitman and Her the next day, so I was up at Newton Lewis where I'd got builders in my house. I get a call off Mike to basically say, do you want to tell me about this small amphibian that's in the studio? I didn't even know what an amphibian was, for God's sake, you know what I mean? And that was Kylie. And you know, the real thing about this story is, and it is true, it really shows how dedicated we were as record producers and guys, good guys. We would not have sent her away. Because I said, well, tell us to come back in 3 weeks or 4 weeks. Well,
yeah.
What we would have done in 4 weeks, I have no idea, by the way. But Mike said, no, she's here, you've promised to make a record, we're going to make the record. So let's get on with it.
But no one had written the record.
Well, no, because nobody knew she was coming in.
So somebody put I Should Be So Lucky together in like 10 minutes. An hour.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was a case of, you know, get some lyrics together, phone your lyrics down, we'll start a track.
Yeah.
And while she's in there, Mike's knocking the song about. I'm going to say 2 hours, 2.5 hours, and it's finished.
Did you know, so when you eventually did meet her, did you know, was it an instant, like, you've got star quality? Because she was in Neighbours at the time. She'd had, The Locomotion was a hit in Australia, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then she came over here, and obviously you moulded her from that moment onwards.
The minute, I remember walking in, the first time I met her, she was doing basket weaving in the reception. And I thought, I'll be honest, I thought it was a school kid. You know, from the local school, they were all sitting in reception. And somebody said, oh, Pete, this is Kylie. Oh, sorry. I'm thinking, my God, she's doing basket weaving. You know? But I tell you what, by the time we got up the stairs, Steve, I didn't think this was a kid from the local school. Because, you know, suddenly you realise this girl comes to life. She commands your attention. She's got, you know, the X factor. Is an overused word, but when Kylie sees a camera, she comes alive, and the camera loves her, and she's quite brilliant. And for us as producers, you know, you'd teach her a song and she'd record it in less than an hour because she was an actress.
Yeah, she
could learn the song. So and we didn't have any time, Steve. Literally, the first album was recorded in probably 6 hours in total. I mean, it took us obviously to make the tracks, but Mike flew to Australia and did. I think Mike did 4 or 5 tracks in Australia. We did the rest in the UK.
Amazing. It's the first album I ever bought.
Really?
Yeah, $5.99, Our Price, Bexley Heath High Street, and I listened to it again and again and again. I could probably tell you the track listings now, but just hearing that album now takes me back to, you know, that summer of '88, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's sometimes when you don't know what you're doing, it's the best way to make records. You literally don't have time to overanalyze, overcomplicate, simplify, and obviously we knew we'd had the number one with I Should Be So Lucky. Nobody sort of saw a career, so you weren't under pressure like with Rick Astley, where suddenly you got the biggest record in the world and everybody's going, when is the Rick Astley album coming? And you're thinking, oh my God, we've got to write all these songs. This wasn't like that.
Yeah,
we've been through that. We learnt that with Dead or Alive. This was we'll record it next week.
Yeah.
Because it was like only Matt Aitken. I know Matt Aitken was really important to Kylie because he came out after we'd just recorded A Hand on Your Heart, and he come out and he went, that girl's got a magic pop voice, and that was the thing that I just went, got it.
Yeah,
I knew then, because Matt never said a word about anything. He just never. Matt did his job. Very rarely passed an opinion. He wasn't like that. But when I remember coming out and he said, "That girl's got a fantastic pop voice. We can record her."
It works so well with your music. And if you ever listen to the Kylie 12 inches and the samples of her voice, it just works.
Well, we spent great fun. We used to mix at night. So the boys would go. We'd go down the pub till 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 9 till 10. That's when we debriefed in the studio.
Mm-hmm.
I would then go to bed till 12:30, 1 o'clock, and come back into the studio, and we would mix all night. And then Matt and Mike would come back the next day at 11 o'clock. They'd listen to the mix. We'd change anything they didn't like, but that was it. It was off, gone, on the way to the factory.
Wow.
But that's the way it worked.
Amazing. Great to ask you about it. We've got 3 more songs. You're going to go for one of your own. I've been waiting for this, Pete. Matt Bianco.
Yep.
So people, let's just reset. People forget that before PWL there was, an earlier life, an earlier phase of your career. Tell me about this.
Right. So we just had the biggest record of the year with Musical Youth. It's been number one all over the world, and you sort of get the impression you're obviously making a few bob because the record's number one in America.
Yeah.
Right? But of course you don't see any money. But you don't see any money for 6 months and 90 days.
Is that the case?
Yeah.
Is that when the royalties come in?
Yeah. So firstly you're going to get the money from the UK. So you're not going to see the money from America and the rest of the world for a year and a half. Okay. So you're suddenly not going out and buying Ferraris. Okay. So you know that you can carry on. You've got a nice little business. It's great. And I get a call. We got a call from Warner's to produce this little band, Matt Bianco, which was Latin-y type little band. And I really liked it. And Pete, who was my partner, Pete Collins, he liked it. We went in the studio and he produced this, and I loved it. Didn't think that much, more about it. It was just, Warner's loved it. 5 months later, I'm into Stockake and Waterman's now really taking off. And I'm in Paris and I see there's a Matt Bianco gig at like the biggest venue in Paris. I go, no, something going on here. They must be supporting. I rang up a friend of mine at Warner's and said, is Matt Bianco on in Paris? And he went, yeah, sold 1 million albums. I went, what?
Wow.
He said, sold 1 million albums.
Wow.
Where? And he went, Pete, where you been? And I went, well, I've been a bit busy with Stockake and Waterman, And I remember at that point, it was that record that really turned my career around. Because although we were having hits, I was playing, and money was a long way off. And it was just, you're always short of cash when you're a small company like that. Mm-hmm. And as I say, the money wasn't flowing back quick enough. We were buying more equipment and better studios and better musicians. And I remember getting my royalty statement from Warner's, and it was like, okay, I don't think I'll worry this year. and literally, we went out and bought all the tools that we're famous for. We went out and bought a Fairlight. We bought the latest Lynn drum machines. We bought another studio.
Yeah.
So that was the record of the past that I never expected to pay for all of the future.
Wow.
But it was the one record that gave me the income then And then the ironic thing was we ended up producing Matt Bianco in our studios here in the borough. So it was like my association with them lasted 3 albums.
Yeah, incredible.
Without them, we probably would have, the story would have been very different.
Yeah.
Because we couldn't have expanded the way we did.
So you've got a lot to thank for this song. Just interesting, I'm going to chuck this at you. You've had 22 UK #1 singles, like 500 million sales. Have you got a favourite?
Not really, to be honest with you. Not really. Because it changes on a regular basis. But it's like these 10 records.
Yeah.
I could pick them straight away because they were epoch making, they're not mine. So I've got a story about each one where, I can't tell a Rick Astley story over a Kylie story over a Donna Summer story.
If we were to play on Virgin Radio 6 Plus one song that represented Stockaken and Waterman, you can only have one song. Come on, Pete, you've got to play ball.
This Time I Know It's For Real.
Donna Summer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I think that was the epitome of the Stockaken and Waterman career.
Yes.
That was the end. Once we'd done the Donna Summer album, that was it. We never got any better because we could never reach that height again.
So that's the absolute pinnacle, is it?
Well, it was all over by then. Matt was with us for another 3 months.
Yeah.
But after that, and the reason that worked was because, again, we were put against a wall and they tried to shoot us, and we pushed off, and we had everything about that album was a challenge. Not Donna, but the record company, because it was on Geffen, who hated what we did.
Mm-hmm.
So I just said to Geffen, right, I'll wipe the tapes.
What was Geffen? Because I remember seeing the logo at the back of
They
your
were rock
records. Right.
They were rock.
Okay.
I mean, rock and disco. They had Donna Summer originally.
Right, gotcha.
So, but they hated what we did. Hated. So John Kolodner, who was their head of A&R, wanted to put guitars all over it. Got Slash on it, and I went, no, I'll wipe the tapes. And it was one of those magic moments that, I got a call sitting in the borough from Arif Mardin, and could we come down and hear this album? And the head of Atlantic Records at that time, who was obviously, legendary, came in the studio, sat down with me, listened to the album, said, Pete, do me a favour. Don't let anybody touch this record. It's pure genius. I want it. I'll take care of Geffen. What's the deal? And I went, well, this is the deal. No, Pete. He said, it's got to be a real deal. I said, Armour, this was Armour Ertegun, Armour, that's my deal. He said, Pete, I'll give you £1 million for it. I said, Armour, I just want my money back, plus this percentage. And he went, Pete, we don't pay percentages. Donna Summer owes us that much money, we're never going to pay you. I said, you know what, Armour, I'll take a chance. And he went, are you serious? I went, yeah. And he went, but you might never get paid. I said, I'll take the chance. He said, you know what, I don't care who comes through this door. He said, never sell this company. He said, because this is the way I started with my brother. And all those hits you love that you keep talking to me about, Ray Charles and all that, I should have never sold them to anybody. I should have done what you're doing now, make the records you love and stick with them.
Mm-hmm.
So, that was what I always remembered.
Did you sit with her then in the studio and record that album, or was it a case that so how did that work? Did you actually...
This Time I Know It's For Real, yes. We sat down with her.
Yeah.
And she wrote in a very different way from we'd ever written before.
Yeah.
So we worked the way we worked. It was the funniest sessions because she just didn't get it. I mean, we would fight. We used to fight over lyrics. So she's sitting in the studio, and she's very religious, right? She's sitting there going, you guys are going to kill each other. This is pop music, Why are you so worried about it?
Yes.
So I remember, Mike coming out and saying, you've got to sort Donna out. I mean, it's like, she's going mad. So I said, Donna, what's the problem? Oh, she says, you're too intense about the lyrics. She said, the lyrics are not that important. I said, Donna, they are, this is what it's all about, the lyrics. And she said, well, yeah, but you got to be careful because I'm old and I can't really sing young songs because I feel uncomfortable.
Because she'd been huge, but then, I mean, she said you guys revitalised her career.
Yeah.
Because she was going nowhere for a few years in the 80s, you know.
Because she was giving reasons why she couldn't do it, right? And I went, no. And I remember, and it's the truth, honestly, this is the truth. I said to her, do you know who William Shakespeare is? And she went, are you being funny? I went, no. She went, of course I know who William Shakespeare is. I said, well, William Shakespeare wrote about death. He didn't bloody die to do it. And she looked at me and went, and? I said, you're a singer. You can sing anything you want. You don't have to do it. And she went, I never thought of that. And it was there that she just said to me, right, you and the boys get on with it. I'll go back to America, to my ranch for 4 weeks. I'll be back in 4 weeks and play me 6 songs. And that's what she did.
Yeah.
And we had, I mean, you know, the sadness was, you know, we could never ever get over. We could never convince her that she wasn't too old for the records.
Right.
And so you know, on the second and third single, she wouldn't appear in the videos because she said she was too old. And if it hadn't have been for a daughter, we wouldn't have never got the records out.
What a shame.
Anyway.
I think I Don't Want to Get Hurt is
my
amazing song.
That's my favourite.
Honestly.
Oh, and she wouldn't put it out.
Wow.
We couldn't put it out.
Just such a
she wouldn't do a
brilliant
video.
track.
She wouldn't put it. That's, to me, is a Stock Aitken Waterman song that got away. And Love Takes
What a
Over.
shame. Yeah, yeah.
Again, one of the best productions we ever did. On the album, it's got great production.
Joe, a friend of mine had, this is no word of a lie, about a month ago, an anniversary party for that album. He loves it so much.
Yeah, no,
and he invited people over and we listened to the album. Yeah.
I know all my friends in America, you know, my gay friends in America, when people talk about high energy, everybody quotes that. You know, when people say what is high energy, they'll go and listen to the Donna Summer album or the Stock Aitken Waterman album. That's it, all in a nutshell.
Yes,
that's it.
Yeah.
Just play that album, you've got it.
Brilliant, brilliant. Okay, the Safety Dance Men Without Hats. Is this about nuclear war? Is it a call for safe sex, Pete? What is it about?
Just a great record. Yeah, it's one of them records. I just heard it and went, what is that record? You know, I just thought, you know,
it's quite a thing, isn't it?
Yeah. You see, when I worked with Nick Kershaw, we had Nick Kershaw signed with my previous company. He's a clever lyricist, a very, very clever man. You know, I'm not that clever, okay? No. I mean, people that are clever with words are brilliant. You know, and Nick Kershaw was brilliant with words. Yeah. Like Don't Let the Sun Go Down. Mm-hmm. You know, so, you know, and he also wrote a song called Human Racing. I mean, clever people. Mm-hmm. I'm not that clever. So when you hear someone like The Safety Dance, it's a clever lyric.
Yeah.
It's clever. And you go, wow, I like that because I can't do that. I sort of get the track and I get, you know, I get the whole feeling of it and I like the video, but I can't do it. So it's like Stevie Wonder. I would never, ever, 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 ever record a Stevie Wonder song because I can't ever, ever, ever make a better record than Stevie Wonder made. So I learnt that when we worked with Stevie Wonder, you know, back in his studio at Wonderland, you know, you just instantly know this guy's a genius. Mm-hmm. Don't try and copy him because you ain't that good. So, you know, you listen to his records or you sit with him and you listen to him, but you know he's in a different league from you. Yeah. You know, so you just don't try and compete.
Are there any artists that you looking back on it, you go, oh, I wish we'd worked with that person, or any that got away that were nearly but not quite?
The only artist I can say that I ever wanted to record was Johnny Mathis.
Right.
And we got close. We met him. We couldn't. CBS just weren't having it at all. They saw that it was almost like Stock Aitken Waterman, Johnny Mathis. You are taking a mickey.
Because there was a lot of snobbery, wasn't there? How did you? That must have been so frustrating.
That's the classic snobbery.
Yeah.
It was like, how dare you even put Johnny Mathis in the same breath as Stock Aitken Waterman? This is heresy. You know,
he could learn a dance routine. I mean, what, you know?
But he'd made dance records.
Of course he did.
You know, but the thing was, he had this. He still got it. amazing voice. So it's like Donna Summer. What could you do with someone like Johnny Mathis, who's got an amazing voice? You can do anything. You can paint any picture you want because he will deliver that picture for you. You know, and we had a great time with him. We had a great lunch, really great, you know. But as I say, when it got to the higher up the, you know, Columbia in America, they went, "Stock aitken Waterman? You must be joking." Yeah. You must be joking over our dead body. Well,
what a shame.
Yeah, it is a shame.
Pete, have you enjoyed this?
Yeah.
I've really enjoyed having you here.
You know, I haven't played these records for so long.
The one we're going to end with on your list is such a groundbreaking record. I mean, I'd never heard, when I was kind of 9 or 10 when I heard this record for the first time, and I thought, wow, what is it? Is it, you know, Run DMC?
Right. So you're roughly the same age as my son would have been.
Yeah.
Right, so my son was, I guess, about 12 or 14, 13 at this time. I was just starting to make my way in the music business, you know, that people knew who I was. So I had my son, you know, and I was working in the States at MCA, Music Corporation of America, with a guy. He was a young guy, very smart young guy.
Mm-hmm.
He had a great job. We were having big hits at the time, you know, with Musical Youth and that. So he got a great career, and he suddenly rang me one day and said he was leaving, setting up his record label with his mate. You know, and at the time, you know, that was a brave thing to do because, I don't know, he was destined for greatness at MCA. He really was. Corey Robbins, his name was. But he was, you know, I remember he was more interested in the disco stuff I'd done, than anything else. I mean, he knew my catalogue inside out, and you know. Anyway, I sort of rang him. I said, "Corey, you know, you sure about this?" Because he was a really smart young kid, and he'd gone in with his mate. They'd formed this record company, and I said, "Well, what have you got?" He said, "Oh, we've signed this act. We're going to make this record." And I said, "You know, what's it called?" He said, "Oh, it's called Run DMC." You know. I went, "Really?" He went, "Yeah." He said, "We've got this track called Walk This Way with Aerosmith." And I went, "Right." And I remember, you know, again, you know, there's no electronic transfers.
Yeah.
Sent me a cassette with it. I played it at home. Well, my young lad went nuts. And, you know, his prized possession up to the day he died was his Run DMC badge.
Wow.
So... it's things like that sort of bring you back down to earth.
Of course.
You know, that's... without that, you know, that just seeing your own son react to something the way you'd reacted to Little Eva's The Locomotion 15 years, 20 years before, you go, wow. And so Corey and I, we were real big friends, but, you know, I'd have to play that record because I saw for the first time my own children, and he went on to have hits of his own before he died. So you see that he'd already followed the old man with, he could spot a hit.
Yeah.
You know, because,
amazing.
You know, I'm going to be honest, I love the What Diddle-oo. I mean, it's just brilliant, but it was just, you know, after White Lines, you just go, wow.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
And so, that, you know, I had to play that because I will always remember that the day we buried Paul, he still had his Run DMC badge.
Incredible.
Yeah, that's
incredible.
You know, that's what it meant to him, and that's what hits mean to you. They are memories.
I was just going to say, I mean, thank you so much for coming in, but also thank you for all the happy memories you've given me over the years and all the brilliance that you've created. And I hope you know how much you've created over the years and how much of an impact it's had on people my age, people who've met partners through your music, you know, been clubbing, have very first memories buying your music. All my pocket money was spent on you, but it was an absolute pleasure.
Well, you know what, as you get older, you know, and, you know, never feel ashamed to do this. Walk up to somebody and say, you know, you were the soundtrack to my youth. That means a million things. That means, you know, you can spend money, you can't spend memories. You know, when you see people come up to you and they say, you know, I'm not old enough to remember you, but I still play all the Kylie tracks. You know, and I love your Kylie tracks, or I love your Rick Astley, whatever it is. yeah, that makes it all worthwhile. I've had an amazingly charmed life. It's been amazing. You know, looking back, God knows where I got this talent from, but 65 years of getting away with not working is a hell of a way to make a living. I remember when I left school, Steve, the headmaster said to my mum, I'll never forget, it's on my school report, which I've lost, crikey, been left school 68 years. I said on my school report, and the headmaster said to my mum, he'll be Prime Minister or he'll get hung for murder. Well, I didn't get hung for murder, and I certainly ain't going to be Prime Minister. Mind you, there's another 3 weeks.
You never know. We're only Pete Waterman, thank you very much. Thank you. It's wonderful to meet you. You're a legend. I know that term gets bandied around, but you really are. And it's been a career highlight meeting you. Thank you.
Pleasure.